Imagine spending your entire childhood not knowing you were abused. As an adult, you might be parenting a child, reparenting your inner kiddo, or let's face it, for some of you, it's both. And you have no frame of reference for what a healthy childhood is supposed to look like. What do you do? Allow me to introduce Bluey. Bluey is a wonderful Australian cartoon series created by Joe Brum and produced by Ludo Studio from Queensland. Though this show is primarily targeting preschool children, it is a joyful watch for adults too. This happens to be my inner kiddo's favorite show and also one of mine. Get your tissues ready because this show has a way to pull on the heartstrings and leave you reflecting for days. Today, on this show illustration, I want to share some of the moments when Bluey showed me what healthy parenting can look like. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental illness and provide support to anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or any of the conditions or disorders mentioned in this podcast, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals or resources mentioned in this podcast are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you for joining me today. If you are listening on YouTube, a gentle reminder to hit the like button and subscribe to let me know this episode was helpful. I want to officially welcome any newbies and welcome back any returning listeners. I am so glad that you are here. And I hope that this podcast is able to become a tool that you can use for your healing journey. So I am trying a new thing. Recently, I was approaching the 700 follower mark on Instagram, and I decided to try something new, which is offer the person who was the 700 follower the chance to ask me a question. And I just reached my 700 follower. Her name is Maria. And thank you, Maria, for following the podcast. And thank you to all of you. Seriously, this community is built on all of us standing together and supporting each other. Community is so important these days, and I am just blown away that 700 people are following my content somehow. Now, Maria's question is focused on somatic therapy or somatic techniques. In a nutshell, somatic refers to the body. So, Maria is asking, which are the best somatic techniques for healing trauma? Such an excellent question. And before I answer this, I do want to remind everyone I am not a licensed professional and I am not a somatic therapist. I'll start off by saying that I feel like the quote unquote best practice is something that's so objective and personal to each and every one of us. And it takes a lot of trial and error to kind of find that one practice that works for you. Maria, what I can share with you to answer this is a few of the somatic techniques that I have gotten from therapy. I was working with a therapist that did somatic experiencing for a while, and I did get a lot from our work together, but there are two things that are coming to mind as I think about this. One of them is an exercise that we did, which was called VU, and basically you inhale, and as you exhale, you basically try to pick a low note to do the VU, and this is gonna stimulate your vagus nerve. So it sounds like this. And you basically keep doing that until you run completely out of air. I try on purpose to lower the note as I keep breathing out. There's something about getting to those lower notes that I feel is very effective and like calming my nervous system down. Another somatic technique is actually trying to bring awareness to the rest of my body. So in my case, I tend to be in my head a lot. And when I get really triggered, I basically go right up to my head and I am overthinking everything and trying to look for a solution. And it feels overwhelming. It's almost like I'm having a million thoughts per second. When that's happening, it's useful for me to bring my awareness back to my legs. That's one of the other things that therapist that I was working with would do with me often. And it was helpful. It would just help me become aware of the rest of my body, not just my brain, not my head, but my feet, my legs, my knees, and just trying to focus on what I can feel. And it is helpful if I can get my feet on the ground and just trying to notice any little sensation, and I can come back to the parts of my body where I'm feeling the anxiety, but continue to check in with how do my legs, how do my feet feel? And I feel like the intention of paying attention to those parts of my body alone is helpful to bring me out of the spiral and bring back that body awareness that I feel is so important. I hope that helps and that it has answered your question. And I'm going to go ahead and also link to the show notes a body scan meditation episode I made earlier this season, because I feel like that body scan meditation is bringing awareness to the entire body, which is also so helpful. Thank you so much for your question, Maria. And I am seriously thinking about potentially adding a Q&A episode for season 3. So let me know if this is something you would be interested in. If you enjoyed this little tidbit of answering a question and you want more, feel free to reach out and let me know. Okay, quick check in. Before I dive into that, I want to hold space and just take a moment to acknowledge that as I sit here today, I'm recording this on the 9th of June. It is wild out there. Feels like the world is on fire, and all the things that are happening with the ICE raids, with Gaza, with protesters getting kidnapped is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And if you're feeling it, trust me, you are not alone. I feel like the common theme I'm seeing right now on social media is it hurts. It hurts. I am trying to set some boundaries with my inner kiddo because she really feels it. And the moment I see the thing, my chest just feels like a bomb exploded. And I'm trying to work with my inner kiddo on not taking on something that is not our fault. And let me explain what I mean by that. I feel like my inner kiddo is very used to taking on shame that doesn't belong to her. Shame from abusers, from people. If anything horrible is happening in the world, my inner kiddo is very quick to feel responsible, to fix it. It's almost like she's blaming herself, but in an unconscious level. And something that I am working on at the moment is helping my inner kiddo take a lot of that weight she's been carrying on her shoulders that doesn't belong to her and putting it where it actually belongs, and only taking responsibility for what is ours. So when I notice that my inner kiddo is up and very distressed, I talk to her and I tell her, listen, what's happening is really horrible. And of course, we want for things to get better. And we are wishing the people that are getting harmed right now all the strength and the healing. And we want for them to not be in that situation. But I'm going to handle this. I'm going to handle how much information we're taking in, at what pace we're taking it in, and I will handle figuring out how we can help. I don't want my inner kiddo to feel like we're completely hopeless and helpless and there's nothing we can do, but also not take on something that's completely out of our control. And I feel like this is a really delicate balance. I'm still trying to figure it out. But even taking those few minutes to acknowledge and name the experience, validate that what she's feeling is completely understandable. It hurts. We care. We don't want people to be suffering. And putting that boundary of figuring out how to care in a way that doesn't deplete us and drain us, in a way that honors what we need without putting ourselves in a really bad place mentally speaking is, yeah, it's hard, but I feel like it does help reduce some of the anxiety that I feel. Like, for example, after taking a minute or two to do that, that explosion that went on my chest doesn't feel so much like an explosion. And I feel like a lot of the explosion is that feeling of wanting to control it and feeling like I can't. Because I can't. I can't control other people. I can only control myself. And I guess that is the best thing I can offer in terms of a tool that has been helpful to me at this time. Still figuring this out. Things are just, feels like everything is moving so fast. And I feel like everyone is at this point just whiplashing constantly with the state of the world. And what I will share as my official check in for this week is I went to my first Pride celebration of the season. I have another one planned later this month, but I went to the same Pride I did 2 years ago that happened to be my first Pride. And I had a lovely time. And of course, the OCD kicked in, and I had a few shame spirals with my time management and my magical thinking and all the things. Something did happen as I was going in. So the difference between this time and the other time is way less protesters. Like the first time, it was packed. There was a pickup truck with a cross on it roaming around, and there were speakers and people screaming and yelling and all the 9 yards. This time, the protesters were pretty much gone. When I was arriving and walking over, there were two that were leaving. And there was a group of people ahead of me, and I saw these two people trying to hand a pamphlet to them, and they said no. And they're coming over, and I was assuming it was protesters, and I was already ready to say no, and I said no. But then they're handing the pamphlet to me anyway, and I noticed that it has the flag, like the flag colors. And I was like, oh crap. What if I am saying no to something that's actually pro LGBTQIA plus? So then I grab it and I see real quick on the bottom what it is about, and it was exactly what I assumed initially. I should have gone with my gut, but the shame won this time. And I try to give it back to them. I was like, actually, no, thank you. You can have it back. And they're like, we don't want it. You can throw it away. You can do what you want. I'm still like just arm extended, a little bit frozen at this point. And then one of them goes, "Ugh, I'll be respectful, so I'll take it back." And he just like yanks it from my hand. I froze. I totally froze. Quite frankly, I was intimidated and scared. It was two men, two cisgender men, to be specific. And I was on my own at the time. The group ahead of me was way ahead of me now because I had stopped and this was happening. Though they have volunteers at the entrance, I was a little further down from the entrance. So, like, I had no protection here. And I just walk away. But in my inner kiddo and I were yelling at these two fuckers as they were walking away. And I was able to share what happened with someone that I met up at the event with. And she had a great point. She pointed out how they were deceiving me with having the flag on the pamphlet. Of course, it is at that moment where I go, right, right. And it hits me that they totally did that on purpose to deceive me. And it worked technically for a second. Yeah, next time I don't know how I would handle it next time. Ideally, I would just rip it right in front of them and throw it on the ground. But let's face it, I am like 4'11", really small stature, not very threatening looking person. I might next time, well, for starters, not grab anything. I think that's the best bet. And if I accidentally do, just throw it away at some point when they're not looking, to avoid any further antagonism. These fucking people. So I will end my check-in with saying that once I was in the event, even though it did rain at one point, I was able to get some queer jewelry and look around and see live music and eat food and just be in community and see people like me, people that are just owning who they are, And the first time I went, I knew nobody. This time I knew some people. So I ran into some people and yeah, I was in community. And though I could have totally used not having that pamphlet interaction, there were no other protesters around after that were getting in the way. And I was able to really enjoy the event. And I was able to go to a queer movie screening the next day. I finally saw But I'm a Cheerleader. Hilarious. It's so funny. I was a little bit scared to watch that movie because I knew it was about conversion therapy. And I guess I didn't know that it was going to be a comedy for starters. And because of the comedy and the way they presented it, though there are some things that I definitely was not laughing about, for the most part, it did not bring up the grief I thought it would. And I think this is because the main characters are pointing out how fucked up this is. And that is the point. And yeah, I now can check that box. And let's get into this episode. I don't know about you, I could use some Bluey. If you are not familiar with Bluey, let me tell you, this is such a wholesome, wonderful show. Before I continue, if you do mind spoilers and you haven't seen the series, you might want to come back to this episode once you finish watching the show. I will be talking about some episodes from all 3 seasons of Bluey, including one of the minisodes. And some of the information that I want to discuss will essentially spoil those episodes. Bluey features voices from David McCormack, who is the voice for the father Bandit, and Melanie Cinetti. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing both names correctly. Melanie does the voice for Chili, the mom. The kids are actually not given credit, and I forget if the kids are actually like kids from people that are involved in the production or something like that. But to protect the kids' identities, they actually don't say who they are. Wholesome, joyful. This is not your typical kids show. It's very clever. And yes, it is targeting kids, but it's doing it with a lot of heart and integrity, and it doesn't water things down. I feel like with other kids shows, there's like not much for the adults, and sometimes they make reference to themes that are more mature, but they do it in a way that makes it so the adults are the ones who can pick up on those references. And otherwise, a kid watching the show is just going to be focused on the games and the kids on the show. You almost have to see it to understand what I mean. This is really a unique production. In fact, there are like podcasts about the show. In fact, there is a podcast that I enjoy listening to called Gotta Be Done. And this is actually a reference to something that Bandit, the father in the show, says. I want to say it might be an Australian expression. I'm not sure. But this podcast called Gotta Be Done, a Bluey podcast, it is hosted by Kate and Mary. They are both moms who watch the show with their kids and created the podcast because they were like, we need to talk to somebody about the show. And I haven't heard of the episodes, but it sounds like they have guests and they have been able to talk to some of the people involved in the show. And one thing that I like about their podcast also is that it breaks down some of the things that I was missing. Like there are some significance with the music. Some of the songs I do recognize. Essentially, every episode is on a episode of Bluey. And the one host really knows her music, and she talks about the music featured in each episode with such detail and really capturing what I'm sure the creators were actually hoping to convey, which is really fun. Yeah, honestly, like this show is for adults too. If you ask me, I would say this should be like required viewing for any human being on this planet. It's so good. And it's also a short watch. Like the episodes are under 10 minutes for the most part. So it's actually a really nice way to wind down and kind of take a break from the wildness of the fires going out there. If I had to summarize Bluey in a nutshell, it would be this is a show about playing games. Bluey is the older sister, and yes, Bluey is a girl. A common misconception that even I made was assume that Bluey was a boy. Just because the dog is blue, it doesn't mean she's a boy. She's definitely a girl. And I feel like the team at this point is aware of this common misconception to the point where one of the episodes features one of Bluey's uncles accidentally calling her a boy. And she corrects the uncle very quickly and asserts her correct gender. So Bluey has a sister. Her younger sister is called Bingo, and this is the orange dog. I just got my first Bingo necklace. I've been looking for Bluey themed jewelry for forever, and I saw a Bingo necklace. at the Pride event I went to this weekend, and my inner kid was like, I gotta have it. And it was like $5. I wanna say it was super cheap. So I'm actually wearing it right now. And Bingo happens to be the character that I relate to the most. She is this young, super sensitive, gentle, and empathetic kiddo. Just joyful. Every time I see Bingo on the screen, I'm just like, that little girl is my inner kiddo in a nutshell. The next character is Bandit, and he is Bluey and Bingo's dad. And then we have Chili, who is Bluey and Bingo's mom. Every episode is basically a game that they're playing. Sometimes they combine some games in the episode, but this show essentially is following this family, playing games, and interacting with each other. And sometimes we get to see episodes when Bluey is at school playing with her classmates. And there are some other times, very few though, when we see Bingo at her preschool with her classmates. And mostly we see them playing in their home, but sometimes we get to see them out in the park, when they are shopping, when they are on holiday, which is vacation for those of us in the US. Not gonna lie, I think I like holiday better. There's something to that word, like it has a nice ring to it. But anyhow, and what I want to do today is share some of the things that this show has shown me about healthy parenting. And I will share some of the nuggets of wisdom I have gotten from some of the episodes in the show. The show has 3 seasons and there are a lot of episodes. I want to say they're averaging like 50 ish episodes per season or something like that. So, that being said, this will not be the last time you will hear me talking about Bluey. I believe the show is technically done. However, I have heard that a movie is coming. I have not heard a lot about the feature film. There is no trailer or release date yet as of today. Here's what I will say. If the movie ever happens, you betcha I am taking my inner kiddo to the theater to see it. And I honestly hope this movie becomes a reality because I would love to see more Bluey. I'll start off with the first nugget of wisdom I got from the show. So, what I will say about this show and how it has been helpful to me is is a show that I can come back to time and time again, and my inner kiddo just loves it, and we both get something out of it. And quite frankly, I've seen the show now 3 times, and there's always something new, something that I pick up on that I didn't before, or something that I forget about. And then when I am reliving it or re experiencing it, yeah, it just feels like joy all over again. When I decided to watch the show, I already had heard the buzz about how it was such a great show. Now, here's the thing that I did not expect to get from the show. This show does a phenomenal job at modeling not only healthy parenting, but realistic parenting. That brings me to the first nugget I want to share from the show, which is from the episode Work on season 1. In this episode, Bandit is trying to go to work, and the girls are trying to get him to stay and keep playing with them. Towards the end of the episode, Bandit tells Bluey that her job is to make up games. And that blew my mind because I took it in at the time, like, oh, that's right. Kids are supposed to just be playing games. I feel like as a kid, I felt so much pressure to be and perform and be this like little mini adult. And I felt so much pressure to get straight A's and do excellently when I was singing and always be a well behaved kid and not break any rules and just follow everything to the T and essentially be the kid that everybody else would point out and go, oh, that's how you want to be, that kid right there. That's the role model. So much pressure. I wish I would have played more. And I did play, but I feel like I was so scared of living, of playing. I remember being so scared of getting injured, and I wouldn't spend too much time outside. And I wish I would have done that. If I could go back, I wish I would have been able to spend more time out there, just exploring and just being a kid. And I have taken this lesson from Bluey and I apply it in my reparenting with my inner kiddo. We constantly go back to me reminding her that she gets to be a kid now and she actually gets to play. And that's her job. Her job is to play games. And the only thing she needs to think about is making up more games to have fun. and I'm gonna handle all the adulting and all the responsibilities. And she doesn't have to figure that out on her own, especially without help. I feel like sometimes I am definitely projecting, and let's just say I see the girls playing and they're doing something that the parents don't want them to be doing or something like that, and they just keep doing it anyway. Like moments like that, I can still feel my inner kiddo like scared for Bingo and Bluey because we were so conditioned to the moment we get told to not do something, stop right away or else. I kind of get that anxiety come up. And sometimes I'm like looking at what's happening in the show and I'm like, oh, that would have. The shoe's going to drop very soon if they don't stop doing that. And what blows my mind every time is that the parents don't blow up. The parents are never abusive. And it is not that the parents don't get annoyed or frustrated or scream for a moment. They do. And that's what I mean by how this show shows realistic parents. Like Bingo and Bluey do not have perfect parents. Bandit and Chili mess up. And it is not about being perfect. It is about the repair. I remember hearing in group therapy that for someone to have a good enough childhood, the parents only need to get it right 1/3 of the time. And you heard that correctly, 1/3. Not perfect 100%. That's not possible. Nobody can do that. I'm not a parent of a physical child, and I know that. There's no way. We're human beings. 1/3. If you were traumatized as a child, chances are they got it wrong so much that not even 1/3 of the time was good enough. It was way less than that. Take that in. Something I notice in Bandit and Chili is you never catch them complaining to the kids about their actual adult lives. They might share if they're feeling upset. And here's the thing, the kids can pick up on when they're not 100% on when they're feeling sad. Like the kids can tell. You never see Bandit or Chili unloading about work problems to the girls, and you don't see Bandit and Chili unloading any potential marital problems on the girls either. Like that's not stuff for kids. They might do like a playful complaining about some of the habits that Bandit has or things like that, but it's done in a playful way and not to demean or bash each other in front of the kids. It is so clear that they love each other and they accept each other. And I think that's the part that I love about them. They're very real about the fact that there are things that they don't like about each other and there are things that they love about each other. And they choose to still be in relationship with each other because they love each other. It is more about accepting each other and their relationship radically with all the realistic expectations. And it makes a difference. Another nugget of wisdom I got was from the episode Road Trip. So Bandit is trying to avoid being behind what he calls the gray nomads, which is these senior citizens that are going to the campsite. And basically, it sounds like there's a lot of them. So if you get to the campsite after these people, you'll end up with like the worst spot on the campsite near the toilets. And he wants to avoid that. And he's trying to get the family on the car as soon as he can. And he's trying to get on the road fast so they can make it to the campsite on time to get a good spot. As you can imagine, during the episode, things happen, and now they're behind the Grey Nomads, and it's not looking very good for that great spot he wanted at the campsite. And Bandit handled his frustration and his disappointment in such a tactful way. Basically, Chili and the girls are still enjoying the ride and going about their lives, and Bandit goes, now is not a good time for me. It was another moment where it blew my mind to like see healthy modeling of you're not supposed to feel perfect and happy and joyful all the time. And when you're not having a good time, you can embody that without abusing people around you. He's not taking it out on the family. You don't see him taking it out on Chili or the girls. And I really enjoyed seeing that. And it left me thinking for a while. Another episode where Bandit also shows the power of patience is duck cake. He's trying to bake a duck cake for Bingo's birthday, and all the things that are going wrong with making this cake are pretty much going wrong. And there's a point where you just see him reach his breaking point, and he's frustrated, and he looks so defeated. And in this episode, you see Bandit show a lot of patience while he's trying to bake the cake, At the same time, he's trying to get Bluey to clean up the living room. They had a bunch of toys around that he wanted Bluey to put away. In any other situation, I have seen some people blow the lid in ways that I will not say today. But Bandit ends up on the floor just at his breaking point. And Bluey actually ends up cleaning up some of the cake that had dropped on the floor and ends up cleaning up some of the toys. And something that I got from this episode is the fact that kids inherently want to help their parents and want to make things okay. And even in this show where these parents are doing a really good job, Bluey still shows those tendencies. And it really showed me that a lot of the things that kids do, it's just part of their developmental stage. Like that's what kids do. And to realize that it falls on the parent to set the boundaries so the kids don't take on responsibilities that don't belong to them. And another thing I've seen on this show, and I've seen Bingo do this in some episodes, is blame herself or take responsibility for AKA ruining the day. There's an episode where they're trying to celebrate Mother's Day. And Bingo, I feel like she dropped the breakfast that was prepared for Chili. And Bingo thinks that she actually ruined the day. And Chili did a really good job at letting Bingo know that it takes a lot more to ruin the day, and she has not ruined anything. And Chili uses that as an opportunity to teach Bingo how to regulate, especially when something goes disarray, which is to have a good cry, dust yourself off, and then the show must go on. What I like about that strategy is that it still honors the good cry. Like it still honors the emotion and letting the emotion pass by, and then you continue. So it's not bypassing it. I feel like the bypass equivalent of this would be, instead of having the good cry and dusting yourself off, to just continue, and the show must go on. But the show cannot go on until you process the emotion. And that's some food for thought. Another episode where Chili nails it is called Chess. And in this episode, Bandit is trying to teach the girls how to play chess, but the girls keep calling the game chest. That's why the episode is named that way, as in CHEST for the game chess, which is CHESS. And in this episode, Bandit is struggling to teach Bluey how to play chess. At this point, Bingo wants to learn too, and he's trying to explain the rules to the girls. And chess is a complicated game. I did look up online, and apparently young kids can learn to play chess. I actually learned how to play pretty young too. But looking back, it's just a very complicated game with tons of rules. And all the pieces move differently. It's just, yeah, it's a lot for a kid to take in. And I think the reason the name of the episode is what the girls call the game is because they're actually making the game of chess their own. So they're giving different names to the pieces. And the girls were struggling with the fact that you can take pieces away. And they're upset that there are players coming off the board and they want their pieces to be friends with the other team's pieces. And towards the end of the episode, the girls are starting their own game with the pieces that have been taken off the board. And Chili comes over and tells Bandit what I consider one of the best wisdom moments of the show, which is work on their heads later. For now, just hearts. You can't get any better than that. If you focus on the hearts, everything else will fall into place. Another episode I loved was Turtle Boy. This is an episode where Bingo finds a stuffed turtle on the playground. So during the show, Bingo wants to take this turtle with her as her new toy. And Bandit keeps telling Bingo, you need to leave it behind because the owner might be looking for it. And during this episode, we get to see not only Bingo playing with this toy, but also another kid that tends to come after Bingo to play in the playground. And this other kid also has the same thing going on. They love playing with this turtle. They want to take it home. But that kid's parent, also like Bandit, is insisting to leave the toy behind for the owner to be able to find it. And something that I love about this episode, and it happens in the show, they tend to bring from time to time a dog that speaks a different language, like French. Or in this case, in Turtle Boy, the other kiddo that's playing with the Turtle Boy is deaf. And you see their parent communicating in Auslan Sign Language, which is the Australian Sign Language. And it's just a beautiful episode how they do it. And what happens in this episode is Bingo ends up hiding Turtle Boy. And she does it with the excuse that it might rain and she doesn't want Turtle Boy to get wet. But she's actually hiding the turtle, hoping that it will prevent the owner from finding it. Now, in all this ordeal, when the other kiddo comes to play with the turtle and his name is Dougie, Dougie can't initially find Turtle Boy. He does end up finding it, but he ends up putting it somewhere else. So when Bingo returns the next day to the playground, she can't find Turtle Boy where she had left him. And I saw the moment where she felt the shame or felt that guilt. And she comes out clean to her dad, Bandit, and tells him, I know what happened. I try to hide him, and that's why he's gone now. So it's again that tendency to blame themselves. Like kids tend to do that automatically. And Bandit does a really good job at not shaming Bingo and adding on to the shame. Like, imagine this for a moment. And this is where toxic and abusive parents just make things worse. Imagine being a child that already has the innate tendency to blame yourself because that is what is developmentally appropriate. That is part of the age that you have. That is part of having a brain that is 5 or 6 years old. As a kid, everything revolves around you. So anything that goes wrong goes back to you. That's how the kid's mind works. Imagine having a parent that on top of that is adding shame and blaming the kid and saying, yep, that was your fault. You had it coming. Doesn't sound very good, does it? It's extremely damaging. I forget how Bandit does it with Bingo in this episode, but this episode reminds me a lot of something that Dr. Becky talks on her Instagram account. And there's a post from Dr. Becky about how to handle a situation when your kid is quote unquote misbehaving or doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, or they make a mistake or something like that. And it is letting your kid know that you are a good kid having a hard time. Shame is all about believing that you are bad, that you as a person in your core are horrible. Guilt is understanding that what you did is bad, but not you. And that piece of reinforcing how you're just a good kid having a bad time can help that child developing understand that they're actually not a bad person and they just made a mistake. I feel like something that's very important in parenting is avoiding creating the belief that the kiddo is a bad person, because that is so damaging, especially during developmental years. It is about helping that child differentiate that their behavior and a mistake they make is not who they are. It's just something they did. And this brings me to the next episode, Circus. I love this episode. One thing that I loved about the beginning of this episode is the parents are going to vote and they take the kids with them. I don't know if this is how it is in Australia all the time when it's voting day, but it looks pretty fun from the show. From what I could gather, the adults are having a cookout or a barbecue, the kids are playing, and it almost looks like a backyard party. But the kids basically are asking questions about why are there all these signs with different faces of dogs in them and what's going on. And the parents are honoring the questions with answers, but they're answers that are age appropriate. The parents are not dismissing the girls. They're not going, stop asking so many questions. It's none of your business. You'll get it when you're older. None of that crap. Like they're actually answering. They're like, yeah, today's the day where we get to pick someone that we think can do great for our country. And the kids are like, oh, okay, well, I like the haircut of that one. I like the outfit the other one has. I want to say it's Chili who says this. And she's like, that's not how we pick people. Like you pick the person that's going to do the best job. And I have to say, given the times that we are living in, I feel like Chili's wisdom should be broadcasted to every single person that can vote out there. I like how they frame it for the girls because it gives them an answer that is good enough to satisfy their curiosity, but it's not adding the burden of explaining the policies or catastrophizing in terms of if this person comes, all these horrible things are going to happen. And I'm not saying to be in denial about that, but if we take in the developmental age of these kiddos and the fact that, quite frankly, let's face it, as an adult, knowing what's happening and the consequences of voting and the consequences of candidates and the things that can happen and all those things, as an adult, I'm having a hard time with it. Can you imagine being 8 years old or 6 years old? That's not information for kids and definitely not something that kids need to be carrying on their shoulders. Now, during this episode, there's a few ways in which we see the importance of setting boundaries. Even seeing these little kids navigating setting boundaries was like mind blowing to me because I struggle with boundaries so much. So there's one part when one of the classmates is asking Bluey to force another classmate to pretend being her husband. And Bluey and Bingo are trying to explain to them, it's like, Bluey can't make this kid do anything he doesn't want to. And I love that. I love how they emphasize consent. Like, imagine. I was just like, heck yeah, Bluey, good for you. Well done. Honoring consent from a young age. Brava. Something that I grew up with, and this was just culturally the thing, and everybody was doing it, was forcing kids to not only hug adults, but give them the fucking kiss in the cheek. Oh my gosh, can it's just can we take that away? I feel like especially after the pandemic, like I am more aware now of like body boundaries, just the concept of hugging and kissing in the cheek, and especially to see kids being forced to do that. And sometimes you see the kid is so uncomfortable. I hate that. I've been in that situation where I go somewhere and this kiddo that I have maybe seen twice in my life is getting told to give me a hug and a kiss. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, they haven't seen me in like 3 years. I get it. Don't worry. And the parents are still doubling down, and the people around them like, no, no, you gotta hug them. And they force the kid, and it's just like, I feel so bad. I feel so bad. I don't ever want to get a hug and a kiss from someone who doesn't want to give it to me. And I definitely would not want to put a child in that situation either, or any adult for that matter. It's just no. I feel like that's one of those things that sounds nice in paper to be that warm and welcoming, but at the expense of your boundaries and your intuition, no thank you. Now, there is a bully in this episode. One of the kids that are playing with Bluey and Bingo, his older sibling, Hercules, is definitely behaving like a bully. And at one point, I like that Bingo tries to voice her boundaries pretty assertively. Basically, what's going on is Hercules is playing with his brother, and his brother is bored. He's just laying on the floor playing this obstacle for him to be playing motorbikes. The younger sibling, Winton, he sees Bluey and the rest of the kids on the other side playing circus, and Winton goes over to join them. So then the older sibling comes over and is trying to get the little kids to do what he wants, to play his game. And Bingo goes, you can't tell us what to play. So Hercules ends up forcing all the youngsters to lay down and basically be further obstacles for his motorbike game. So basically, Winton, who's Hercules' younger brother, goes, let's run away. And Bingo gets this angry face and goes, no, and gets up. And when Hercules is about to jump over her, she goes, stop. You can play with us if you like, but you have to play circus. So then Hercules goes, no. And Bingo goes, okay, well then you can't play with us. It's just like, oh my gosh. Where was Bingo this weekend when I needed that with those two idiots with the fucking pamphlets? It's amazing. I couldn't believe this kiddo had the guts to do that. And I love how brave she was. She stood up, she voiced her preference. And when Hercules was like, no, he's like, okay, well, I'm not playing with you. Beautifully done. What ends up happening eventually is Bluey, Bingo's older sister, and the protagonist of the show. And I feel like I haven't talked about Bluey that much. Bluey has a great moment here. Bluey comes over, and to give you some context, what had happened was the kids are Bluey's age. So Bluey would be in between Bingo's age and Hercules. They were dealing with a situation on the side. Now they all come back, and Bluey is returning to seeing that this older kid has been basically bullying her sister and the rest of the younger kiddos. So she comes over and she grabs Hercules and goes, oh, don't be silly. You are right on time. We need a muscle man. And she recruits Hercules to play circus with them, and they all end up playing together. But this was one of those episodes where both Bingo and Bluey just nailed it. And I feel like that's the moment where you see the parenting that Chili and Bandit shining through and really empowering these girls to stand up for themselves and handle tough situations. And it happened again. I am so passionate about Bluey and I have so much that I want to say. And the episode ended up coming up quite lengthy. I'm still working on it technically, and I have decided to split it into two parts. So this will wrap up part one of this Bluey and healthy parenting episode. I invite you to return next week to hear part two of this show illustration, and I'll keep sharing more nuggets of wisdom from this absolutely wonderful show. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to reflect about. I want to invite you to think about your inner kiddo. I believe that we all have that part of us inside that holds all the joy, creativity, innocence. And though being an adult can be very overwhelming and we might not be thinking about this part of us all the time, I feel like slowing down and just becoming aware that that part is somewhere in there and is waiting to have its moment and waiting to be seen and recognized can be a powerful realization. As you reflect, I invite you to find a quiet moment and see what comes up. And if there is anything that that inner kiddo needs, maybe that inner kiddo wants to check out Bluey. Maybe that inner kiddo has another show that they would like to watch. Maybe that inner kiddo would love to spend 2 minutes out in nature. Maybe they're craving something to eat. See if you can get in touch with that. And if nothing is coming up right away, that's okay. You can keep practicing and remember. And that, in and of itself, is data. And it can give you information about parts or areas of your healing that might need more attention and focus. If your inner kiddo would like to check out Bluey, I invite you to maybe see the pilot episode and see how that feels for you both. And this invitation doesn't have to end with your inner kiddo. If you have a special kiddo in your life, perhaps reflect on something you can do to show up for that inner kiddo in a way that helps them feel safer in the world, especially now. Please let me know in the comments how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform that you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think could find this podcast helpful. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation via PayPal. I want to thank you in advance for your support. A little can go a very long way in helping the podcast reach more survivors that could benefit from finding this content. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you find your inner Bluey. It is time for our farewell affirmations. I invite you to repeat after me. I welcome the belief that I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for your presence.